Hey everyone, welcome to a new season of Ultimate Survival Tips and the Survival Show podcast, where it's our job to take you step by step through the mindset, skills, tactics, and gear you need to survive almost any emergency, crisis, or disaster. And our hope is that by the end of this show, you'll be more prepared than you are right now at the beginning. Welcome to the show. I'm David. Today's show, we're going to talk about current events from a preparedness perspective and how to barter your time, talents, and treasure in a real-world situation, possibly following a society-altering event. And before we're all done, we're going to go to the gear cave, and myself and my two co-hosts, we're going to pull out some gear that we're really excited about. If you love triple-bladed knives, you don't want to miss that last segment. But before we get into all this, I want to introduce our co-hosts. First on my list is the one who's almost never seen but always heard, and he doesn't have his headset on right now, Mr. Producer Ben.
Howdy, howdy.
How are we doing today, Ben?
Fantastic.
He's running around here trying to keep all the cameras running. Next, we've got an Eagle Scout with us. He's a survival instructor from way back, an Eagle Scout. He's a serial entrepreneur and the founder of Apaco Box and Outdoor Core. And he's also the author of countless best-selling survival books and some really great survival TV shows. My friend, my mentor, my buddy, Mr. Creek Stewart. Look at you. Peace. What's going on, Creek?
Hey guys, good to see ya. You guys are looking good. I haven't seen you guys in person in, well, forever.
Right. I mean, true story. Creek and I have only met in person once, and when was that? That was back in the day.
Dude, that was long time ago, man. That was when I wrote my first book, Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag. It was at a book signing I was doing at the BLITZ show in Atlanta, Georgia, and I met you. And my life has never been the same since.
Neither has mine. Well, Creek, I'm glad you're here. I'm pretty excited to get into this content. But before we do, let me introduce our other co-host for today. He's my good friend and my loyal UST sidekick. He has big, fat hands, and I didn't write that. He did.
Sometimes I write scripts, too.
And he's appeared on one of our most popular videos. Check it out. The Mora Hack video. Dude, I think you got bonused for that because it actually went over 1 million views.
I think it's 1.5 million now, I think. I haven't got the last couple bonuses, though.
And he also wrote our worst received video ever on YouTube.
That was because you said, okay, what I want you to work in, I want you to work in explosions, ninjas, and Bigfoot. And somehow I'd like to work in AR-15s. And I wrote that script.
No, it was actually the funnest video we ever did. It was sort of kind of a comedy gig, and that's not our thing.
Yeah. the peeps did not like it very much at all.
So this is Mr. Joe Wagner, and he is also the guy that works hard to keep the weekly survival eMag subscribers fed with great tips, tricks, and practical survival content. And he's a knife maker now.
Yeah. Oh, a very super novice knife maker. But hey, everybody, it is good to be here today and hanging out with my buddy Dave. And having just met Creek, it is a real honor. And I'm looking forward to the pod.
Awesome.
Well, you sound like a man of many talents, Joe.
I mean, I don't know if they're talents. I get to do a lot of different things, but we're not sure how good I am.
He's got a lot of interests. He's a really capable dude and a great outdoorsman and a trustworthy friend. So I'm glad to have you guys both here, and I'm glad you guys got to meet each other. So here's the deal, everybody. Joe's going to kind of moderate this discussion because if Creek and I just start going, we're going to talk for like 3 hours. And
the people might want that, though.
Well, if you guys want like long form podcasts, even live streams, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comment section down below. And Joe, I'm just going to let you get us started here.
All right, man. So one of the things that I know has been on your mind and on your heart is this idea of bartering, of trading. And earlier in the podcast, you shared that you wanted to walk folks step by step through mindsets, skills, tactics, and gear. So let's kind of put this all together. Let's start with a mindset and what goes through our brain, what affects the way we think. And we were talking a little bit beforehand, before the podcast got started, about some headlines, right? And not just headlines, but some things that are actually going on in the world. And these things are really affecting just about everybody's life at this particular point. Here in America, we're seeing some inflation. Like, it's pretty obvious when you go to the gas pump. Mm-hmm. This time, maybe last year or a little while ago, gas was, the national average was actually $2 or less. Last time I filled up, it was like $3.55. Our dollar just is not stretching near as far as what it has. I have a friend who was building a house, and he had to stop building a house because the house would cost more than 2 times because of building material cost has gone so far up. So these headlines that we have, I mean, inflation is one of these big things that is going on, and it's affecting our lives. And there's a bunch of other ones too.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd like to kick in here now is just the whole concept of money. And the concept of money is really that money is proof of work, right? Mm-hmm. So Joe says, "Hey Dave, I've got a ditch for you to dig, and if you dig this ditch, I'll give you $100 a day," right?
Right.
So I go and dig your ditch, or whatever you would have me to do, paint your house, and I do the hard work. I put my time in, and that's our greatest treasure, right? We've only got so much time.
Right.
So I put the time in. At the end of the day, I do a good job, and you give me $100. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I take that $100, and that's really, in a sense, we've sort of kind of bartered, but the proof of my work is in the money that I have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
Creek,
sense.
does that make sense so far?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So we take that money then. That's a store of the value of our most valuable asset, which is our time. Okay. We take that money now, and I go to Creek and I say, "Hey, Creek, I got $100 and I see that your Apaco box is $59 plus shipping. I think I'd like to trade that hard-earned job, part of that for an Apaco box because I think it's pretty cool." Mm-hmm. And Creek's okay with that. He's like, "Sure, I can add one more subscriber to Apaco box." And I give him my money. That's my hard work. Like, I've made a conscious decision to put that money into Apaco box or whatever, food or gas, right? Now, the issue is, we're looking at inflation, and this is a very complex problem that we're not going to get into today. But since I think it was 1972, the U.S. went off of the gold standard. At that time, we gave ourselves, or our legislatures or our leaders gave ourselves the ability to print money beyond what it was backed by. So it's not backed by, it's backed on good faith. I'll take $1 as long as it's worth $1 or worth something, right? So what happens is, since our greatest currency, our greatest value that we can put into something is work, and we get money from that, inflation really, especially when inflation happens because of quirks in the system or printing of money, like, right? Yeah. The printers go.
Printer go. Brrr.
Yep. Yeah, you did that better than me.
I've got a better mic.
My idea is that it's actually stealing from us. Does that make sense?
Well, your money's not worth as much as what it was before.
So I put in the hard work. Somebody at the top said, "Hey, let's print more money." That's great. I've got more money. My buddies have more money. The banks have more money. By the time it filters down to us, that hard-earned money that we've saved or set aside or whatever has been devalued. Mm-hmm. So it's really stealing, right? And so we don't have the ability to, the value is diluted, and that's the concept that I think maybe is a good place to start with inflation.
And so we've got that headline, and you offered that explanation of what that is, and you've given us the kind of the bare bones behind that. But that's not the only thing that's happening right now that we see in the headlines and in the actual news. Creek, I don't know about you, or how you go about things, but my wife has come back to me and said, "How come there's not as much milk?" as what there used to be, or I went to buy this lotion for my skin and the lotion is not there. We also have like a supply and demand problem that's going on right now too. And there's other headlines that are going. Jump in here, man. Like, what do you see happening in the world that has having an adverse effect on this whole economy sort of deal that we've got?
Yeah, well, I ship a lot of product. You mentioned a pocket box. We ship 1,000 boxes every other month, and a lot of boxes in between, and a lot of other orders and multiple other subscription businesses. So one thing that I've really seen from a small business perspective, which I believe is really the heart of this country, is small business owners and small businesses, is absolutely an increase in the cost of goods sold and just operating supplies. I've recently seen a major hike in just the cost of cardboard to make the cardboard boxes that I ship a pocket box in. I've seen shipping prices go, even at the post office and certainly with some of the other carriers, increase significantly in the past several months. Even it feels like in the past several months, unless it just snuck up on me in the past year. But the cost of envelopes has gone up. Everything has gone up on my end. And so I think small business owners are really pinched with, okay, so it's an odd type. It's not inflation, but it feels very similar. You're selling something for the same amount of money, but you are making less as a small business owner.
Right.
And so it affects people at multiple angles. It's not just that the dollar that you earn doesn't buy as much as it did, let's say, a year or 2 years ago. But as a small business owner, the amount that you sell a product for is you profit less than when you were selling that exact same product a year or 2 years ago. So I have a really unique perspective on both sides of that, and it is not pretty, and it is not pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Creek and I, just before we started here, we were talking about the idea that we need to do something as far as raising shipping costs, and that gets back to, we've got some,
on my end then, as the consumer,
as your end on the consumer,
right? I'm like, oh man.
So right now we're doing what we can, Creek, right, to kind of eat the cost and try and justify it, but at some point everybody's got to raise their cost.
Yeah.
Thus, you can even just look at inflation in fuel prices, diesel and gas.
Right.
And that goes up. It costs more to ship a container. That increases the cost of postage when we ship something across the country or across the world. And, small business owners, you can't take those hits.
Here's something also that's in there. Creek, you had mentioned about like workforce issues. Dave, you and I have talked about this too, about how many folks that you've actually got working in your companies. It is really difficult to find somebody that will fulfill a job for you, that'll come to work for you. Again, I use my wife as an example. She hires and she fires, and she's responsible for individual operations of her company, and she can't find anybody to work. And they're paying a decent wage, and it's a good company to work for, but the folks just aren't there to work. And it's not just in our local area, but when you think about, all right, so even in our ports, we've got people to unload the ships, and there's just not as many of them, or truck drivers, or warehouse workers, or meat packers, or people to put the product on the shelves. It seems to be that there is a workforce shortage.
Yeah.
Well.
We don't only just have inflation because of printing more dollars. We've dumped a lot of money into, some of it maybe justifiably. We all want to be compassionate towards people who are going through hard times with the pandemic, with all the other things that have precipitated around it. But think about the whole proof of work thing, right? I worked for $100. If I don't have to work for that $100 long enough, I'm not sure that I want to work anymore, right? I'm not saying that that's the reason that we're having problems finding people, but we've also started to put stress on people as far as, can I ethically work at my job anymore? Am I going to follow whatever mandate my company has? And so we're forcing people out of the workplace, which sort of kind of doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Let me just throw out, and we won't tackle them in depth unless you want to a little bit later, but a couple other things that are in the headlines, like this chip shortage. Like, man, go to try to buy a truck or go buy a video camera or buy a phone, and then China and this hypersonic missile like comes out of nowhere. So we've got these sorts of, that's a scary thing. And I don't want to be a fear monger whatsoever at all, but we've got this kind of unrest and unsettling, and we just don't know what's going on, and we feel the effects of these things. And then there's like, what is this hypersonic missile stuff? And like, what is that all about? And so the headlines out there are kind of alarming. And so, Creek, I want to throw it over to you. And at the same time, we don't want to start this podcast by being the world is falling apart, everything is going to pieces, because we want to offer solutions. But what's one of the scariest, most alarming things going on in the world that you think is right now?
Well, domestically is spending. I'm no economist by any measure, but you don't have to be an economist to know that, a gross overspending has ramifications. And ultimately, those ramifications are going to fall on the shoulders of the American people, for sure, and so spending is a huge concern for me, on multiple levels. Certainly that involve everything around the pandemic over the past year, and just spending on so many different levels. It seems a little out of hand to me right now. I'm kind of a frugal person anyway, so when I hear the headlines about the kind of spending that's happening right now, it's very scary to me, because I may not know what is coming down the pike from an economic standpoint because of that spending, but I do know that there are consequences to that, and I do know that those consequences are not going to be positive.
Dave, what's one of the most alarming or one of the scariest things, most unsettling things that's going on in the world right now that you think?
Actually, nothing real. It doesn't really scare me.
You are so brave.
I'm not brave, but I have read to the end of the book, and the book that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not like I'm totally unprepared.
Right.
I mean, if you read, we're talking about the Bible. If you read Daniel, you read Jeremiah, you read Isaiah, you read Revelation.
You read the Gospels.
You read the Gospels, you read some Matthew, throw some Matthew in there, right?
Yeah.
This shouldn't surprise us, really. I'm not saying it's the end times. I don't know. But, Creek's motto is, what's your motto, Creek? It's not if, but when.
It's not if, but when. But let me, I'm going to piggyback on that conversation.
Okay.
Because now that you brought up biblical prophecy, it's been something that I've been really interested in for a while now. And if anyone listening has an interest in biblical prophecy, I read a really great book. I listened to it on tape, but I listened to a really fantastic book on end times prophecy called The Tipping Point. The end of the end times is here. And man, it was an absolutely fantastic book written by Jimmy Evans, who, if you're familiar with Jimmy Evans, he's a really incredible teacher in the Bible world. And he wrote the book with the premise of not scaring people about the end times, but that the prophecies in the Bible are there to bring peace, in the midst of end times. And it was a really, really fantastic book. Now, he does make a very compelling argument that we are living in the end of the end times. And it was a fantastic book to read. If you're into Bible prophecy, if that's something that you enjoy reading about, it's not like a casual read. It's a pretty meaty read, So, but it was a fantastic book, Tipping Point by Jimmy Evans.
That's
great,
awesome,
Creek.
man.
Yeah.
And even just knowing, as a pastor, knowing that there might be some people out there that might be pshaw, whatever, not whichever end times view that you particularly take, we are in the end times. I'm going to share that with you. Ever since Christ went back to heaven, this is right. We're preparing for His return. But at the same time, there is evil in the world that we are at war with. So do not be surprised that evil rises up and wants to attack and go on the offensive. And so, I'm right there with Creek. This is we need to be ready, and we do need to be prepared.
Yeah.
It is not if, but when.
Yeah. So I'm generally not, I'm not scared. It's all troubling. And it's troubling because we've lived in relative peace, right? My entire life, I've lived in relative peace.
Mm-hmm. We kind of have been spoiled, I would think, a little bit.
In the United States, we've generally not had chaotic situations. And it just seems like in the last year and a half, we've gone one to the next, right? So, yeah. I mean, it's all kind of freaky, but I think if you're listening or watching this podcast right now, you probably are concerned. And two, you've probably, if you've been following us for any length of time, you've probably got a sense of, or you want to begin becoming prepared more.
I think at the end we want to really hone in and on this idea of bartering and offer folks some insight into that. But like right now, what is our response to that? Like let's just talk skills. Before the podcast, we were just kind of sharing, like all of us seem to be, and I'm speaking from a point of humility right now, just kind of Renaissance men, just able to do lots of different things. And certainly there are many, many things that we are not able to do. But like skills wise, in response to what is going on in the world, what would you guys think would be something that people should, hey, you probably ought to learn how to do this. You probably ought to learn how to do this, whether it's gardening or whether it's hunting or whether it's mechanics or whether it's carpentry or whether it's self-reliance and those sorts of things. Like what would be...
I got it.
You got it, Dave?
Yeah.
All right, so what would you suggest somebody do?
So two things. One, I'm not going to really hit on much because we've kind of been talking about around this for about 5 minutes now. But here's a skill you need to learn. You need to learn how to pray. Okay, let me just leave it at that. The other thing that I would suggest is learn how to preserve the value of what you have. If you have $1, learn how to preserve it. How do you preserve $1? You don't put it in a can or can it or put it in the freeze dryer, right? I would suggest taking a portion of your dollars and converting them into some sort of a high value item, hard asset. Is that property? Is that food? Is that storing a couple of extra gallons of fuel? It may be. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a skill. I think it's a mindset. It's an awareness that, hey, things aren't quite right, and I'm going to be a responsible human being. Budget my time and my money well, and start devoting. Maybe you are already, but maybe you need to be devoting more, because it doesn't seem like things are decelerating. It seems like we're really accelerating towards some sort of a society altering situation.
How about you, Creek? I mean, you guys are the instructors. You guys are the teachers, and I guess what I'm asking you to do is just boil everything down into one thing. What would be the most important thing for a skill? What would you recommend for folks in light of today?
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the survival skills I teach, that's for sure, because I don't believe the world's going to completely fall apart. I just don't subscribe to the notion that, we're going to be living off the land and things like, even though those instances happen all the time to people, I don't think that's where the world is headed. I don't see it happening like that. But anyway, so it doesn't have to do with building a wild shelter or a fire or anything. Like the living off the land type skills that I teach. It would be one of two, really. Oddly enough, my dad always used to say, son, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the older I got, the more I realized that to be true. I've struggled with a skin condition called psoriasis my entire life. It's a dry skin condition. It's hereditary, but it can be debilitating. Like it can develop into psoriatic arthritis and stiff joints and even other types of internal inflammation issues. And so I have been on a personal journey the past year and a half, really trying to learn how to eat as a skill. I know that sounds a little silly, but I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that nothing that we're talking about skill-wise matters if you don't have your health.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of our health is dependent upon how we eat. You know, the old adage of we are what we eat, let food be your medicine is absolutely true. And it is it's very difficult to learn how and to understand how to eat well so that your body can heal itself and so that your body can be healthy in order to achieve and procure and compete or produce in all of these other areas. And so I would challenge one of the first things is really understanding how to start eating healthy. You know, it's really easy to eat unhealthy and it's very, very hard to eat in a way that promotes health in your body, you know? And so I've been on that personal journey with some success and limited success and some real breakthroughs as well. You know, I've had complete clearing of my psoriasis and you know, I've had it flare and the whole deal, but I've learned so much about how to eat healthy in order to not be on some type of, you know, medication and dependent on medication because I don't know, that's an odd one. But outside of eating, I would say any single skill that is in the realm of food production could be incredibly valuable because you talked about bartering. And I don't think there's anything more valuable than food in the bartering department. So whether it's beekeeping or whether it's, you know, growing asparagus or raising rabbits or any type of singular aquaponics, sprouting, any type of singular skill related to food production, I don't think you could go wrong with.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, Creek, I think you hit on something as far as preserving and improving your health now with nutrient-rich foods. I would say first aid and medical. Become a medically prepared person as much as you can.
And those aren't the romantic things, right?
No,
the romantic, sexy thing is to go buy a $3,000 or $4,000 rig, and hey, check out my AR, check out everything I got hang out from that, check out my plates, check out this.
If you're not a functioning human being, you're not going to be able to provide for yourself or your family.
If you can't run 100 yards with that rig, then it's kind of worthless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are the sorts of things that like I default to because, oh man, that's cool. Oh yeah, I want to get one of those. That looks really cool. But you know, your challenge to
yes, you do.
I do. I can become obsessed with those sorts of things. But your challenge, Creek, to eat healthy and to eat right is going to be far more important than that.
You know, and this is interesting too because it gets us back to preparedness. Like, okay, so you want to stockpile food. Let's just break it down a little bit, Creek, because I know you've got a whole course on this over on Outdoor Core, I believe.
Yeah.
If all you're planning on eating in a crisis situation is MREs, you're not going to be healthy for very long.
Right.
You want to take it from there, Creek?
Well, you know, I mean, they're great for short term, but you definitely, and I don't think that even long term food storage, you're ever going to be in a situation really where you're going to have to survive off that stuff indefinitely. You know, so MREs are great, is fine for short term, but you're right. You know, if you were to have to survive off of your long term food storage for months at a time, then you know that could absolutely affect your health if you're stowing away the wrong stuff, you know, whether it's an allergen or something that, you know, produces inflammation in your body or something like that, you know, it'd be a bad idea.
Right.
Yeah. Joe, let me get back onto maybe the track you wanted to be on the skill focus.
Okay.
I've got a quote here, and then you can move us along as fast as you want. A quote from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." Okay? So what I would recommend for people is do an honest assessment. Where are you at? Think about things like food, power, money, and fuel. Think about first aid preparedness and think about personal security. If you look at those, like for instance, I know Craig likes to say this and encourages people, turn off the power in your house for a day and see what happens. Mm-hmm. You're going to very quickly start to see what your gaps are in mindset, skills, tactics, and gear. All of those, you're going to see them just by turning the power off for a day if you can stand it. You know, you got a couple freezers in your house. What are you going to do with that food?
Right.
You know, so look at those areas as far as as far as things go. And, self-defense, people skills, prayer. Yeah.
Let's then take that and let's be very realistic about it. We've mentioned this a little bit before. Creek, you've said, I don't think it's going to come to this, or I don't think it's going to be this, but let's look at some things that have already happened. Now, obviously, none of us were alive in the 1930s. Like our grandparents have probably shared how hard the Great Depression was.
Yeah.
So we have that has happened. We were all alive in the 70s and the early 80s with like stagflation, and where gas prices did shoot up, and the interest rates were super, super high. And like, that's probably the most that we have ever experienced. I think we were all very young at that particular point, but what about in this, in the context of bartering also, like what happens if the 1930s comes back? What happens if we have a Great Depression? And it's happened before, and I'm not saying that it is going to happen again, but man, maybe we ought to be ready for it or thinking about it. So what? I'm asking you guys. You guys are the experts, right? I'm like, what here? I don't know what to do. How should I prepare? What should I be thinking about? What can I barter? What do I need to worry about bartering? Like, fill this in.
Well, back in the 1930s, there's no doubt that a way higher percentage of the country were producing their own food. I don't know what it is off the top
That's a
of
good
my head,
point.
but it was an insanely higher percentage of people who were producing at least a bit of their own food. Okay, and so that becomes a little bit scary, because I think the percentages now are what, 3% of the people in the country are now producing food for the other 97.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally something very similar to that percentage. It's a very, very scary figure.
Well, there was a lot higher. There was a lot higher percentage of people who were self-reliant back then too. Just period. I mean, we're just trying to recover the skills that maybe we lost through a couple of generations too. So that's a really good. That's a good point, Creek.
And it's easy to overcomplicate self-reliance too, because when you think about, oh my gosh, what do I got to do to be prepared to deal with off-grid and provide my own food? What's really interesting is, it was really a way of life not that long ago. I mean, when my mom was a little girl, they didn't have any indoor plumbing.
Right.
When my mom was a little girl, and I mean, they were still using the bathroom in and out. I used the bathroom in my grandma and grandpa's outhouse when I was a little boy, so what does that tell you? I mean, but it hasn't been that long ago that people were eating on wood stoves and cooking on wood stoves and no AC and no internet. I mean, self-reliance actually isn't as complicated as people make it out to believe, but it absolutely is a change of lifestyle, and I mean, just little steps in those directions could make a huge difference.
This is going to sound silly. I was talking with a guy my age, maybe a little bit younger, yesterday, and he was going hunting for his very first time, which was really cool. I was encouraging. He had moved up here from a more urban area, and he was really proud of himself, and I was proud of him too, because the person he was hunting with shot a deer, and he came over and he helped drag the deer out. He helped clean the deer, and he's like, "Oh, I was so proud of myself. Last year, there was a dead squirrel in the pool, and it took everything I had to get the dead squirrel out." And I was like, "What?" And I wasn't picking on him. It wasn't because he was a sissy. It wasn't because he was a wimp. It wasn't anything like that. It was just that he had never had to experience that. He had never had to do some of those sorts of tougher things, had never seen it. And I don't know as if I'm going in the right direction, Creek, but there might be some folks out there who have trouble getting those dead squirrels out of the pool. And I don't know how to say this in a gentle sort of a way, but you're going to have to be ready to do a lot more than that if times get tough and rough. Some of the, like going to the outhouse on the regular, my grandparents would share how hard they worked and how much they had to muck out the barns and what they actually had to do. We've become we've become very sensitive to things that maybe we shouldn't be super sensitive to.
I got 3 words for you, Joe.
Go for it.
Do hard things.
Do hard things.
Right.
And be ready to do hard things.
So if you want to increase your survival IQ, and you take it from here, Creek.
Hunger is a very powerful motivator to do hard things.
Yes, it is.
You know, so for the person who may struggle with picking up a squirrel, my comment would be, you know, hunger can overcome a lot of things. Hunger can help overcome a lot of those issues pretty quickly. Actually, I have a funny story about squirrels at our house, about dead squirrels at our house. We have this thing that we call the dinner bell, and it's when the what's it called? It's not transistor. I'm just going to say transistor, but that's not it. I can't think of the word for it. It's big things at the top of electrical poles. It's like the big round fuse thing. Well, we call it the dinner bell when that blows at our house, because that means a squirrel has walked across the electrical line and reached over to hop that line and touched the pole and the line at the same time, and that transistor and that big fuse thing blows, and it sounds like a thunderbolt. It sounds literally like a lightning bolt.
Oh man!
And so we always joke that that's the dinner bell, because River runs out and grabs the dead squirrel from beneath that, and we clean it.
So just if people don't know, it was a given name.
Transformer.
Transformer. There you go.
Transformer. Yeah, I'm saying transistor.
Creek is Creek, and his son is River. For you all that didn't know that.
Nice.
Yeah, and my daughter is Lakeland.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
But we just call her Sissy. Or I typically call her Big Sis.
My wife's middle name is Brooke. She's kind of in the club.
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
So maybe Joe, I got 3 things and I got 4 things. We got the old saying of God, guns, and gold, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got bullets, beans, band-aids, and brains.
Brains.
I don't, when it comes right down to it, for bartering, that's not a bad place to start.
I think one of the things that we've all been talking around, especially both of you guys, is the importance of brains in that issue.
Creek's smiling. I want to know why he's almost busting out laughing there.
No, I'm just saying beans. Beans all day long. Food, man.
Beans.
It's what people freak out about first, man. Not eating. It'll get people real crazy real quick. No food. I'm telling you, man. Food has been used as a mass manipulator throughout the history.
Right.
It's the number one weapon that has been used to motivate and abuse really entire countries, entire populations of people by limiting their food supply. Wars have been won over cutting off food supplies, and supply chains. So I'll go down in history to say that, if I were to stock up on any of this, or if I would have, food is a very powerful bartering tool for sure.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So jump off right there. So Creek's like beans. Here's something. As a guy that had watched both of your videos from you and had talked with you, Dave, we have used this term. I was never washed over by the wave, but I was always riding the wave. I was never at where I needed to be, but I was often ahead of other folks, right? I'd see this coming. Probably for me, starting out from zilch, the easiest thing to put aside was the beans. You'd be able to,
right.
They were,
sure.
But even during the middle of COVID, they started going away fast too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was getting tough to find beans.
Yeah. The easies go away first, right?
Right.
I remember
the frozen pizzas were gone like that.
Peanut butter went pretty quick too, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah. So and it's interesting too right now as we record this, there's all kinds of reports that basically say that there's this wave of circumstances and supply and demand that are going to cause this food shortage. Again, we're not here to scare people. It's just in the news. And so is it manipulation? Is it just chaos? Is it just people not knowing what they're doing? I'm not going to share my opinion on that right now.
I've got an off the wall question that goes along with beans.
Oh, yeah,
Creek, what's your favorite bean to set aside? I'm talking like your dried bean. Like, which one is your bean? That's the one.
Yeah, well, I stock up on a lot of beans, but black-eyed peas is actually one of my favorites. You know, I have a lot of nostalgia associated with black-eyed peas, but I mean, I stock up on probably 8 different beans. I stock up on. I got a lot of black turtle beans. Got a lot of pinto beans.
Black turtle beans. I am not familiar. What's up
turtle
with those?
beans. I got a lot of those. Got a lot of. I got a lot of beans. But we like beans. We've really cut back in this journey of kind of healing my skin. We've really cut back on animal products because I noticed that it was animal products that was kind of flaring my skin sometimes. I don't think it was the animal products. It's just all that crap that finds its way into the animal product, you know. And I noticed as I cut out some of the animal products that my skin improved. So we've really relied heavily on beans the past year and a half or so anyway. And I like beans. So we've learned how to cook beans 1,000 different ways till Sunday.
I was just going to say that it's important for people to know how to cook beans, to know what to do with beans, because it's not just, you don't just throw those in the microwave.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to go into all the details of how to do that, but if you're going to stockpile beans, know how to prepare them.
Yeah, not only know how to prepare them, but one really interesting way to work with beans is in a manual grain grinder. Set it on the really like big grain setting, and you could grind those beans into a flour that you can make some really interesting like tortillas and like soup bases just out of a variety of beans.
Joe's writing this down.
It's right in my brain. I'm gonna have one of them. I'm gonna hang one of those on my rig.
And you think we should have a manual grain grinder, Creek?
Yeah, I have a manual grain grinder. Absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of a long-term food storage pantry. Not only bulk dry goods like beans and rice and things like that, but also a decent stock of the top 20 to 25 things that your family consumes on a regular basis. So that you have 20 or 25 of the really prominent food items that have a shelf life of anywhere from 1 to 3 years. Most canned goods or boxed goods have a shelf life of 1 to 3 years.
Give us one that somebody might not think of.
Well, they're different for everybody. So the way to go about it is to list out most people really only eat a small number of things. Very few people have a huge, diverse diet. Okay. So it's pretty easy to nail down 20 of your top food items that you consume on a regular basis. For us, it's spaghetti, mac and cheese, spaghetti sauce, olives. What else is in our deep? Peanut butter. What else? Olive oil is definitely one of ours. So we have a laundry list of things that we eat all the time that have a shelf life of 1 to 3 years. So that's what you call your rotation stock.
Right.
So you're always buying 1 or 2 extras of those when you go, so that you're building that back stock and you're rotating through those items. So that over time, it's pretty easy to develop, a several month food storage supply of your favorite items that you eat.
Yeah. That's an easy way to do it. Just add 1 or 2 when you go to the grocery store, maybe a little bit more right now. I have to say this, Creek, I love like your top 3 items included mac and cheese. That just tells us that you have younger kids.
I got kids, man. Dude, I got kids. I don't eat mac and cheese. I actually cut out gluten. I don't eat any gluten. So my kids, man, they love mac and cheese. I might be in danger if I did not stock mac and cheese.
One of those boxes of mac and cheese might turn into, I don't know, what could it turn into? A gallon of milk some way down the line, or a dozen eggs if somebody, those are the sorts of things that I think you would be able to trade back and forth to be able to do that as well.
Sure.
Food, man. Food.
So besides food, what if we came up with like our top 10?
Okay.
Top
still
10.
on a complete curveball here.
So,
which is fine.
I mean, I'd love to do that. I'd love to hear what Creek's got to say.
Top 10. All right, so like round robin top 10?
I can, yeah. Go for it. So let's do this. Let's go with standard items, and then We'll do like top 10 standard items, and then we'll do a couple of like maybe long-term sustainment items. Does that make sense, Creek?
Yeah. Can you include skills in these?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. Creek, you're first.
Fuel.
Ooh, Dave.
You know, this is going to sound weird to some people, but electricity. So right with Creek's fuel, I'm going to not only for the car, because with an inverter, I can actually power some essentials, but the way that our situation is, solar power, we've got some solar power generators and fuel generators. That's a longer term sustainment item, but I'm putting that right on my critical list because the freezer meat goes bad if I don't have that, and I can't get water out of the ground.
All right. So I'm going to throw one out there that does not go like in the top 3, but maybe it's in like, I don't know. I'm a father of 3 daughters. And so mine is feminine hygiene products. It might sound silly, but for me, that's a concern. I don't know if that's a top 10 or that's a top 20 or that's a top 30 or figure it out yourself. But for me, that's something that I was like, I'm going to buy some extra of those. And I don't know about them or how they work or what they do, but I'm going to buy some of those.
So besides those, what would be the next one that your girls would say would be the most important thing?
I don't know. What are you thinking?
Would it be toilet paper?
No, heck with the toilet paper.
Yeah, for you.
We can figure out the toilet
Even
paper.
we-
Yeah, just say that until you run out of it.
Even we have a mountain of toilet paper.
Yeah.
I didn't buy any.
Well,
of
can
that.
we? Well, let's lump toilet paper in there with those. How does that sound?
Yeah, hygiene.
But I'm gonna pop in real quick because
go ahead.
I talked about my mom using not having indoor plumbing. Dude, my mom didn't use toilet paper. They literally, now I don't know if this is a sign that my parents were just like ultra broke when they were kids. But my dad had a dirt floor until he was 28 years old. His room had a dirt floor until he got married when he was 28 years old.
Wow.
But anyway, but my mom, they literally used magazine like Sears catalog, dude, and corn cobs for TP when she was a little girl. Now she was raised very poor in Kentucky, but that has not been long ago. My mom is not quite 80, so far less than 80 years ago, there were still people wiping their backsides with corn cobs.
Let's let that sink in.
So where were we?
Like, seriously, let that sink in.
Seriously, dude, it's not been that long ago. My mom could do it. I can do it.
Right. Smooth rock, a handful of snow.
So I'm going to go right off of that, Joe, and I'm just going to say hygiene items lumped in there.
We're going to lump in hygiene item. Like that's a good
Hygiene's really important. I mean, if the electric goes out and you can't flush, we've talked about this before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But if the electric goes out and you can't flush your toilet, what are you going to do? Well, it's going to get pretty gross.
You're going to have to figure out a latrine outside
you,
somewhere.
You need to have soap. You need to have containers for water, a water purification system.
All right, so that's
like 4 things.
Well, I think the hygiene items and all those things, but I think water purification is its own separate. So, like, is that going to be like you added to what both Creek and I were talking about, but then you're saying water purification,
and just generally like plumbing, if you wanted a bigger category. But
that was my next one.
Yeah, go ahead, Creek.
My next one was plumbing skills. Being able to solve people's plumbing solutions, being able to solve people's plumbing problems. And now you can go down a rabbit hole of other trade skills. But on a side note, myself and my son River, since the pandemic started, so whenever that was, last March or whatever, we have exclusively used a composting sawdust toilet in our garage.
Oh, good.
We have not used a flush toilet in our home since the beginning of the pandemic. We've been experimenting with using a composting sawdust toilet. And I tell you, I keep on telling my wife, I'm like, I don't know why people have flush toilets. You do not need a flush toilet. Like we're raised thinking you need a flush toilet. You do not need a flush toilet. It is really incredible, the simplicity of a 5-gallon bucket sawdust composting toilet. You just put you do your business, whether it's number 1 or number 2, on top of some sawdust, throw your paper in there, cover it up with a layer, close the lid. The sawdust, there is absolutely no odor whatsoever from those buckets. we store them up, and in a few months they basically turn into dirt, which we don't put in our vegetable garden, but we put them around our trees and stuff like that.
After the podcast, I might get a recommendation from you on that one, because that's something I've thought about.
Dude, and it is a major thing that people need to think about. Like, if your restroom was to stop flushing, you're in serious trouble if you don't have a bad solution, And the solution in this case is so simple. It's a $15 solution, and a few bags of sawdust can get you through several months of no flushing toilets.
Fantastic. All right, so we've got 4.
Hey, if you want one, I've got a couple of what do they call them? Port-A-Loos here. It's basically a 5-gallon bucket with a seat and lid built right into it. So if you want to go from $15 and you want to really glamp it, you can spend $30 on it and get yourself a bag of sawdust.
All right, so I've got a 30-second funny story. My wife and I built this ramshackle. All right, I built for her this ramshackle cabin out in the middle of the woods on our grandparents' land, and we were too poor to have an outhouse, so we had an outbox. It was just, you just sat on the outbox and just did your thing in there, and it worked.
There you go.
Nobody laughed that much. Yeah, it's exactly what it was. All right, so here's our list. We got fuel.
Wait, that was the story?
That was it. I told you 30 seconds.
Oh.
He cut the punchline out.
Yeah, so we've got fuel, electricity source, number 2, toilet paper, feminine hygiene items is number 3, water purification and plumbing skills I lumped in. So there's 4.
And I think we literally, some people that were expecting or anticipating what we were saying, their minds probably went.
Because what haven't we mentioned yet?
Well, we haven't mentioned everything that everybody thinks is most important. Right?
Well, we're talking about bartering items, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying these are things that you really do need. I'm just, for a number one.
Yeah, we're talking about what people are really going to need.
On a day-to-day basis.
What are they really going to need? They're going to need their car fixed. They're going to need they're going to need mechanics. If
you're a mechanic, you've got a highly valuable barterable skill.
How many people out there don't have a wrench set? It's even those sorts of things. All right, I jumped it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Who's next? You said mechanical skills.
Mechanical skills, yeah. Get yourself a tool set. Learn how to use it. And get yourself a couple of books. Remember those things that are printed on paper with ink? Because if the grid goes down and you don't have a YouTube video to look up how to change the oil in your car or how to, fix the electrical system, a book might help. Right?
Right. All right, what's next?
Okay, barterable items. I'm just going to say you need to have some cash on hand, because regardless of what may happen, and if things went really, really bad, credit cards aren't available. You still need goods. For a short time, there may be stores, there may be gas stations that have fuel and things. You're going to need a way to, if they can't take credit cards, I don't think they're going to give people gas. So you need something that you can barter for gas. And I think in the short term, cash is probably going to still work. I wouldn't put all my chips on cash, but I would highly recommend that you have a couple of few $1,000 on hand.
Even if cash doesn't work for a long time, it will have a perceived value.
Right.
Yes.
Creek, I don't want to jump ahead of you, but what do you think about like medical supplies and medicine and first aid sorts of things? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, dude, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Right.
That's huge.
Did you hear what I was saying earlier?
Yeah, but you were talking more about food. What about like Band-Aids? What about like Tylenol? What about those sorts of things?
Absolutely.
Dude, absolutely. But probably the more, probably less on that level and more on the kind of higher level triage type stuff, Okay. I mean, antibiotics for sure. And, a little bit higher level than, Tylenol and Band-Aids.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So, and there's ways to get some antibiotics to set aside, whether we want to divulge any secrets.
There are. I can point you. I can point you to a book.
One One thing I want to just quickly mention in the fuel department, because some people may hear fuel and they may be like, oh man, I'm never going to be able to barter fuel. I just like, I don't have a way to store fuel. It's like totally out of my reach. Keep in mind that, a part of that fuel category is wood. Over approaching maybe even over 90% of homes in North America now rely on grid-tied heat, whether that's electric, gas, or oil. And any one of those goes down, and a lot of people don't have heat.
Right. I mean, those of us that can see are looking right over your shoulder. And I think it would be good to have that wood stove, knowing you.
Yeah. That's out of the question for a lot of people, and but they could potentially, think about converting gas stoves to wood stoves if that's possible, or putting in a smaller kind of, like a smaller, less invasive freestanding corner stove or something like that. I've done that in a little place of mine. But it's, wood heat is a really, really good backup heating alternative.
Literally, Sportsman's Guide has 2 little stoves. If you had to do it and you had to isolate a portion of a shed or a portion of your home and heat that way, for like $300, you can get one of those little stoves with a chimney kit.
Yeah.
Also, kerosene heaters also.
Yeah. Oh, totally. That's what I carry.
Yep.
We stock kerosene heaters and a couple of 55-gallon drums of kerosene.
Bingo.
Can I throw back to medical a little bit, Joe?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say it because people are going to see it anyway, probably by the time this podcast goes out. The new Tiny First Aid Guide is arriving very, very soon.
Very soon.
And it's got all of this stuff. If you're concerned about first aid and medical, you can do one of 2 things. Just hang on a little bit. Check out Ultimate Survival Tips or Amazon. Just search there. Or I heard it might be going into, one of those subscription boxes too sometime.
Yeah. If you guys haven't seen David's tiny guides, I can attest to the fact that they're chock full of just absolutely incredibly valuable information. And they almost all of, I feel like every one of those skills has like a QR code that you can pop in on a video, which expands those guides almost like into an entirely different universe off the paper, it's a pretty cool, hats off to you on those, man.
Well, I'm
not really the jealous type, but I'm pretty jealous of that.
Well, I heard that, I don't know, I was thinking maybe next year I'd maybe work with somebody on a bug out guide. Do you have any suggestions?
A really good author who's really an expert on bug out, and people should really buy that book.
Maybe a tiny bug out guide. I don't know. What do you guys think? If you think of tiny bug out guide, inch guide would be something you want.
In the meantime, they should probably go to Amazon and type in these particular search terms. What would they be, Dave?
Or our website.
Or our website.
Yeah, just Tiny First Aid Guide.
I was talking about Creek's book.
Oh, Creek's book. Have you written a book? Would you like to write a guide with me, Creek?
Talk about low-hanging fruit there. Holy moly. Okay.
Don't Google Creek's book, man. You just get the bad reviews all pop up first. I don't know how that happens. I need to hire like an SEO company that just gets all the bad crap off first page.
Yeah. Well, let me just throw something in on this medical. There's a section in the Tiny Guide that I'm actually looking at, Creek. It's a whole section on contingency medicine. And we were talking about antibiotics. There's 2 ways you can go. And one way is for worst case scenario only. And I'm going to recommend a book, and that's Antibiotics. Okay? You want to get Alton's Antibiotics book by Dr. Joe Alton and Amy Alton. And that's available everywhere. It's a very, very it's a very well regarded book, and they'll talk to you about fish antibiotics there. Okay. The second one is, and I didn't know this until I was writing the Tiny First Aid Guide, was that there are preemptive prescription companies where you can do like an online visit. They get your medical history, and then if you want preemptive antibiotics, doxycycline, amoxicillin, I have a whole list of things that they will potentially prescribe if it's right for you. and then you will have it. This is actually kind of a common thing for people that travel a lot, movie stars, etc., just in case they get in a bad spot and they're not near any kind of modern medical facilities.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's finally get to bullets. Are we at the bullet point yet? Have we missed anything?
I don't know. Did we get to 10? Were there any other?
Well, we are fuel, electricity source, hygiene, including toilet paper, water purification, plumbing skills, mechanical skills, tool, cash on hand, medical, higher level medicine, emphasis and focus there, like wood heating systems and heating systems. What else? You guys have to remember that because I'm at 2% on my computer, so
okay.
Go poof in a
no,
second.
that's all good. So another thing I'd recommend. So we've got beans, Band-Aids, brains. We've talked a lot about brains and skills. Bullets, I would just put in that category. We've talked a lot in this podcast about situational awareness. If you don't know anything about that, there's plenty of information out there about that. Just don't have your face in your phone. Just be aware of your surroundings, all that sort of stuff. But, if things got really, really, really bad, I think bullets could be a currency. And also, they can help with regards to developing some personal self-defense skills, right? To power a firearm, for instance. So I would recommend two things. One, if you have a knife, if you have a firearm, get trained, spend at least as much, maybe double what you have into that tool or those tools in getting properly trained, and then have a reasonable amount of ammunition and things to power that, and then get trained in how to use it in a tactical situation so you don't hurt anybody and so that you... Is that what you meant?
Yeah,
is that what you're looking for?
What I was going to share too is I
don't know what Creek's perspective is at all on firearms.
Well, I was going to kind of bounce
self-defense.
that back over to Creek. I think that all of us have pretty big heart. We are about helping people and caring for people and loving on people. But like Craig would say, there's bad guys out there.
Yeah.
And even my grandparents would tell stories about when they were little kids going through that Great Depression. There were desperate people who you had to watch out for your stuff so that people wouldn't steal your stuff. And so there is sort of a situational awareness of, hey, you want to keep your stuff safe. And worst case scenario, you want to be able to defend people that you love in your life. But having shared all of that, I guess I'll just segue that over to you, Creek. When it comes to the bullets and the guns and the rifles and the pistols, like what's kind of your take on having those available? Personal self-defense.
Yeah, well, there's two categories. For personal self-defense, obviously that's a category, but there's also the hunting category.
Yes.
Those are two, typically two totally different types of firearms,
Great point.
But I'm a huge proponent of being prepared in the self-defense department. There are certainly some situations that would warrant the use of a firearm for self-defense where nothing else is going to do the trick. If you're put in a really, really bad situation where you're penned in your home and somebody's trying to get in, or something horrible like that, there's few things that we're going to do, like try to box them, it's like, there's few things that are going to stop an attack like a firearm will, and so absolutely being prepared from a self-defense perspective with firearms. That should be a no-brainer really for it, from my perspective. Obviously that's my humble opinion, right? But that feels like a no-brainer to me, right? Especially if you have a family, I can see somebody maybe not valuing their own life, but when it comes to protecting the life of their family, that's a whole different story. But, hunting is a different animal. I'm a huge proponent of 22 long rifle for hunting. And I'm also a huge proponent of air rifle for hunting. I invested in a really nice 22 caliber air rifle, like an air rifle, like a pellet gun, basically. Except this one it pumps up with like a bicycle pump. It can shoot like 100 times. It's got a little 10-round magazine of pellets that can be fed in. It's an absolutely just lethal small game hunting tool, if you needed to use it as such. Super inexpensive, doesn't require, pellets are really cheap. I have thousands of pellets on hand. Air powers it, so you don't really need bullets per se. you can buy like 10,000 pellets for hardly anything, for just a fraction of the cost. And they're not nearly as coveted right now as traditional ammunition, and they're silent. I could pop a squirrel out my window in a neighborhood and hardly anybody would even know, or like a turtle dove or something like that. I mean, and they're incredibly accurate. Really, really, really interesting hunting tool for, some people hunt with them almost exclusively anyway, but especially in a worst case scenario, that becomes a really interesting firearm to have.
And that turtle dove is going to be enough for a stew, right? You're not going to spit, and the whole family is not going to eat that turtle dove, but you're going to be able to take that small game item and that's your protein, and you're going to be able to add it to other things as well. I just didn't want anybody to think that you're going to go out and you're going to shoot 20 turtle doves, and that's going to be your turtle dove grilling for the evening.
Yeah, well, I love dove. I mean, I love dove hunting. We grill dove. We have them all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, agreed with that. I didn't mean to shortchange dove as a food item, but man, if you guys are hungry and you can shoot one dove or one whatever it is,
totally, it's like a little mini chicken.
You got it. What do you think, Dave?
I'm gonna just throw in one more thing here, since we're kind of swung back to food. Creek, maybe you have a book you can recommend to get people started, but foraging for food. I mean, we're talking about the importance of food, and there's all kinds of, regardless of where you live, almost regardless of where you live, there are a host of medicinal and edible plants around you in various different seasons, right, Creek?
Yeah, I would hate to have to survive off of wild edibles alone, because that's a full-time job. But I could tell you what, you could add, with a little bit of knowledge, you could supplement your diet pretty easily, no matter where you live. I mean, I remember walking around in Central Park in between interviews in New York once, and I could not believe I could have collected buckets of acorns from Central Park alone. It was like, it was like insane. And, some ethnobotanists estimate that more acorns have been consumed over the course of human history than oats, rice, corn, and wheat combined.
That's fascinating. Yeah, learn how to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
It's a big part of my business. I have obviously a business called Wild Edible Plant of the Month Club, where I teach a new wild edible plant every month. So, I'm very passionate about wild foods. I believe that, our ancestors only ate wild foods, and a huge issue with our health these days is that diversion from wild foods. And so I've been on a journey for the past many years to incorporate more and more and more wild foods into my diet.
Give us that one more time, Creek, so somebody doesn't have to go back and re-listen to what that is. How does somebody get hooked up with that?
Just wildedibleplantofthemonth.com.
All right. Good stuff.
I think we covered this pretty good.
Yeah, man. We're doing good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You want to wrap it up?
So we kind of promised people we can do a little short thing on our favorite gear.
Gear cave.
Gear cave?
Gear cave.
All right, let's go to the gear cave. Let's let Creek go last. That way everybody will remember his thing, and then we can tell people how to get it. How's that? It's like guest host privilege right there.
Okay. Well, then you go first.
I'll go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have gotten a lot of interest and requests from people for us to do a video promoting our new Msk1 Warrior. So if you're familiar with the Msk1 knife system, you're familiar with the fact that of the original one, originally launched on Kickstarter. I actually started designing that knife with Jeff Freeman, who was the lead designer and innovation manager at Gerber, who now has Freeman Outdoor Gear, makes great knives. Jeff's a very, very good friend. And we spent from 2013 to 14 working on the first prototype of the knife. And when we did the first prototypes, I actually had one of the original prototypes was very similar to what you see right here. The problem was we bootstrap everything we do, which means we just self-fund. Everything's got to pay for itself, right, Creek? And,
yeah, welcome to my world.
Yeah. And so the triple-bladed Warrior beginning just got shelved at the time. Well, a few years ago, it was actually late 2016, I was approached by a liaison for a major military organization, and they said, David, have you ever considered doing a triple-edged blade that is really just like the Msk1, but has a secondary blade on the clip point and then a functional serrations? And it was kind of a funny conversation because, I was like, yes, I have. And I sent this person a picture of the original prototype of that, and they're like, yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. So after years, this year we just released the Msk1 Warrior. We only have a few of these left. And we probably, again, back to supply chain issues, steel issues. These are actually made in the USA in partnership with Tops Knives. If you know Tops Knives, impeccable quality, huh, Joe?
It is beautiful. It's a gorgeous knife.
They stepped up. They do our Msk1 Elite line, so they do the non-serrated single-edged blade also, and they really stepped it up. I mean, there's so many nice features and advantages and benefits that they added to what we already had. And all of these knives, besides being a triple-bladed beast, so this would maybe not be as good for let's say somebody who strictly wanted to baton wood or do bushcraft because of the serration up here. It wouldn't do a bad job,
right?
But if you pound
it's just going to chew up your baton.
It's just going to chew up your baton a little bit. But if you want a all-in-one kind of versatile blade for utility of almost any sort, I know a lot of people that carry a pocket knife that has a serration on it just because it cuts boxes and rope and stuff good. Then this might be for you. So we have a couple of these left. We're probably not going to have any more in stock until next summer, literally, because it just takes so long to get everything made right. We've got a few left for Christmas. If you're thinking about the Warrior, grab one. At some point, hopefully this fall, we're going to do a full-blown introduction video to it.
Warrior Week.
Yeah. So this is the Msk1 Warrior. It actually comes with this, upgraded kind of tactical sheath. This is our sear sheath. It's got the two-tone Kydex, and
it's really sharp looking. Yeah. I really dig how those.
Yeah, it looks like a nice knife. What are those running right now, Dave?
I think we're still holding the price at $349, and at the time of this recording, shipping's free. USA shipping's free, which is probably not going to last long. And these aren't. These literally aren't going to last long.
You said that. I think when we were talking the other day, there's like 72 left. Yeah, so when you say a few, you mean a few.
We keep selling out of these things, and we can't keep stuff in stock for very long. With this system, you can also get the two add-on sheaths. So you have the Msk1 Mini, which we're going to have some of those in stock for Christmas here in the next couple of weeks. So look for those. We've got our Firesteel, and you can configure this in various different ways. This can be scout carry, it can be left or right-handed carry, and regular tactical carry. And like with all of our knives, all of our components, sheaths, whether it's a leather sheath or our standard sheath, all of the components work with all of the other components. And we don't want to forget the nifty 20-item handle survival kit that fits right in your handle. So if you want to check it out, they are available on ultimatesurvivaltips.com. And if you have been hesitating, don't hesitate much longer.
Right.
If you want one this year.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
I've got a good story about your original knife, because I was on the Kickstarter I bought one from your original Kickstart program.
Oh, that was you. That was you, Creek Stewart. Okay. I didn't know that
was
you. It was the Creek Stewart.
Yeah. Yeah, I bought one from you. And I had an event here at Willow Haven. There was like 200 people here, and there was this little 10-year-old kid, and I was having some arm wrestling contests, and I arm wrestled this 10-year-old kid, and if he could beat me, he won your knife. Needless to say, I do not have your knife.
Oh my goodness.
Was he built like Joe?
A soft place in my heart that day. That was like an unreal. I've regretted that day ever since. That was an unreal knife. I mean, I'm telling you, man, that was a fantastic knife. So that Elite Warrior looks really cool.
It is. It is super, super. I was going to say sharp, but yeah, it is sharp. But here's my story. All right. So I'm kind of a knife snob, and I'm more of a traditional style looking guy, right? So right.
Yeah.
But I was looking online in catalogs at major knife makers and even at other, handmade knife makers. It's just like, what is this knife going to be that I want it to have? And my conditions where I want it to be able to be essentially a utility knife to be able to do many, many different things. But for me, I've got we mentioned it before, I've got these gargantuan, great big hands. And there was no knife out there that I felt really was going to hit that sweet spot to do everything that I wanted it to be able to do, and then also have a big enough handle. And that sounds like a really silly qualification, but for me, that was really very, very important. And I looked and I was saving up my pennies, and then I went back to my Msk1. And for me, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic and wonderful. And it's like, it's really cool, beautiful knife. But at first I was like, I don't know if that's like my perfect knife. But I went back to that. And so it has grown on me so much that that's my preferred knife that I carry in the woods as like a knife snob. And so I've always thought it was a cool knife, but now it's like, that's a knife that I want to be able to have. Like, that's the one.
We've heard that a lot. It tends to grow on people. Yep.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yep.
It's really awesome.
Cool. Well, Joe, since we're on knives.
Oh, well.
Come on, just real quick. Can you show everybody your knives? Okay, so Joe and I have been talking about actually making knives for a long time.
Yeah.
Joe's been saving up his pennies from helping me out with the Survival eMag newsletter. And Joe, you were busting it out, man. You were committed to getting a knife shop going in your shed.
I did. I put together a knife shop. It's really, I don't know if I'm in the right, but put together this like hidden tang puko, which is really cool, and then this bushcraft knife, and then this little bit larger like camp sort of knife.
You guys can't see the beauty of these knives. These are literally his first 3 knives. Give me your first one.
Wow.
Is that your first one?
That's the first one.
I mean, this is his first knife. Okay, I can't get it that close, but I mean, I've seen people that have been making custom knives for quite some time that,
Well, thank you. I really appreciate
Where's
that.
your last one? Give me your last one. That one. No, I want that one. Yeah.
Talk about a perfectionist.
I mean, look at that. Guys, look at that.
I do like that one. That one's pretty cool.
I like that.
That's pretty humbling. Thank you so much, Dave, you're a knife guy. You guys are both knife guys, but it has been so much
Sometimes
fun.
I like to carry a smaller knife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You might have to teach me how to make me one of those.
Yeah, I'm
making those out of files, right?
Yeah.
Making those out of files.
And so the process in that is just so intricate, and there's so many steps, and you just really have to focus and concentrate. And even though I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm kind of a one-man gang when it comes to being pastor, and we all have we kind of carry the weight of the world, and to be able to get off into the shop and just focus on this, this is the project, this is the one thing, and I'm able to not lose myself, but be productive and make that. And
it's your therapy, man.
It's a therapy sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to, whether it's knife making or whether it's something else, to find that productive, fruitful thing that you can do. And knife making, you don't need to put together an entire shop. I'll share with you the power tool that has been the most helpful for me. But if you have some good files and a vise and a cordless drill, you can do a tremendous amount. Like a hacksaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a bench grinder. Like, those are some, if you have those things, you can do that. And
Yard sale items
that you would be able to go out and find.
Right.
And you can get started for less than, you can get started for less than $100 to be able to make knives. But the one piece of equipment that I had found was kind of a game changer was a 2x42 belt sander. I wasn't able to afford a 2x72 or 2x74 or whatever they are. And I think that if you got like a 1x24, you would be able to do a lot. But like that 2x42 belt sander I picked up on Amazon really is kind of a game changer when it comes to that.
You can do so much with that. That's what I have.
When I looked on, I think you and I had the same model. Ours is made by Palmgren. Well, it's made in China and got a Palmgren name on it. Palmgren ones are like $700 right now on Amazon, but it's the same one. It's branded Norse. Was like $260, $270, and that's about what I had. That's what I had purchased mine for. So
nice.
Yeah, that'd be my recommendation.
Cool,
dude.
Beautiful knives.
Thanks, man. That means a lot.
Creek, what do you got for us? What new equipment are you excited about?
Well, there's two things you could probably have and never too many of. One's knives and the other sparrow rods, right?
Right.
Amen.
How many sparrow rods do you have? Probably 100.
Yeah.
Actually, if you were to go into the bins over there, we might be talking thousands.
Maybe thousands.
Yeah, seriously. So I have a lot of ferro rods. I've used a lot of ferro rods. And so there's always been little frustrations with various ferro rods with me. But I came out with a new ferro rod not long ago called, it's this brand Warrior stock right here. You'll notice that it's the only red ferro rod you've ever seen. Right?
I like the color.
So we've all watched the survival shows where people drop their ferro rods and lose them and their journey's over. Well, that could happen anywhere, right? That doesn't just happen on a survival show. So that was the motivation really behind painting them red.
Yes.
Which is really a standout feature from pretty much any other ferro rod. I've never seen a ferro rod of any color personally. Mm-hmm. And it also protects from corrosion too, right?
Look at that. Whoa.
Yeah, I know, right? So I mean, it just gives you an idea how far I can throw the sparks. I mean, I could probably start a fire with some of these from like 2 or 3 feet away. But that's because of this striker here.
Look at that.
It's like one of those full grip carbide strikers. You know, it's not.
That's always my problem with a striker is it's too tiny and I can't get good leverage on it. But look at that.
Yeah, you know, so we actually recommend striking this ferro rod like you're carving, you know, versus scraping down like it's like a carving motion. It's a very natural motion that people are used to doing with a knife. So carving your ferro rod, you can get incredible sparks with this full grip carbide striker. So that's my Gear Cave plug for today. This is a little pack and these are available on Amazon Prime. These are like, I think there's a coupon now for like $24 that makes them like $24. They're not the least expensive ferro rod, but that's because there's a bunch of extra little steps here.
Yeah. Well, that's not bad at all. I mean, that's a lot of ferro rod there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 1/2 inch by 5 inch ferro rod. It's the last ferro rod you'll ever need. Yeah. You know, it's a fantastic ferro rod. I think it's the most expensive ferro rod on Amazon, but it's worth every penny of it.
Yeah. What search term should they use particularly to jump to that one?
Here's the easy way to do it. Just type in ferro rod and scroll until you see the big red stick.
All right. Bingo.
It's going to stand out like a neon light.
And that's a kit. You get the ferro rod and the striker in the kit.
Yeah, and you get a free course. There's a link to a free course online on how to use it and how to take your ferro rod skills to the next level. So I teach a free course on how to do that with every purchase.
Nice. That's great.
All right.
Thanks for sharing that, Creek. So,
should we wrap it up, Dave?
Yeah, I want to thank Joe. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, you guys are welcome.
Thanks, Creek, for joining us.
Super awesome to meet you, brother.
Creek,
really
you too, buddy.
Before we close this down and move in that direction, can you tell people how they can get with you, connect with you, all that?
Sure, creekstewart.com. Be sure to get on my email list. That's how I communicate with people. I've only logged on to social media like twice in the past 6 months, and so I connect with people pretty much almost exclusively via email. So just add yourself to my email list. You'll see it pop up at creekstewart.com.
Dude, and I love your emails. Very conversational, informative. I'm on your email list twice.
Oh, good. I'm on yours.
I'm on his email list too.
All right, everyone. That's about it. Help a brother out. We're all about win-win situations around here. So we want to keep bringing you quality guests, quality co-hosts. We got to pay producer Ben to produce, right? Smash that like button, give us a 5-star review, leave a comment, and share the show with others. It's free to do that. It's totally free. Did I say it's free?
Free.
Yeah, totally free. So if you, and check this out. If you share this audio or this video podcast with your friends or family, you will help them be better prepared and maybe even prevent them from ending up on your doorstep during a disaster. It'd be worth it, right?
Hey, if I was going to end up at anybody's doorstep, it'd be yours.
If I was going to end up on anybody's doorstep, it'd be Creek. Next, go over to ultimatesurvivaltips.com, grab our free weekly survival and preparedness newsletter, produced and sent out by Joe.
Yay!
Yeah. And while you're there, you can grab a sweet Msk1 or Elite Msk1 Elite Warrior knife before they sell out for Christmas. Go for it. And you might like to pick up a bulk pack of 5 or 10 tiny survival guides or the new tiny first aid guide. And one thing you're going to find out is they're a really high value item that's kind of low cost, and people love them for gifts because they're super unique and helpful. And let's see, what else? If you have any ideas for future podcasts, or you want to let us know whose hair you like better, mine, Joe's, or Creek's, leave a comment below.
Oh, mine's really bad.
I just buzzed mine this morning, and
yeah, I've got totally a dad cut.
I don't think Creek has ever cut his hair.
Mine's fake.
Well, if you want to leave a comment about that, or if you would like us to do maybe some live podcast videos, email Joe at Ultimate Survival Tips. You didn't know I was going to throw that in there. That's Joe at Ultimate Survival Tips, and be nice because Joe has superpowers that you do not want unleashed in your direction.
Really?
Yes. Okay, that's about it. Everybody, thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep it simple, stay positive, and be sharp.